That's one of the main arguments against owning a house is that you have to pay property taxes. And somebody in the chat said it's built into the rent, which it is, right? Like that's the reality of it. I was a landlord before, and as a landlord, you'd have to look at all your costs, which includes property taxes, and then you'd pass that on to the tenant. So even though you're not paying the property taxes directly, you're not sending a check to the city or the municipality, you are still paying property taxes for it. It's just disguised, I guess, as a renter. So that argument from that perspective doesn't really mean much to me, but just where the two, the values to me and the market is right now, I think that it's a much better bet going in Bitcoin right now.
As an individual, you have to be looking at where is the value? Where can you see value? And what can you see as potential futures? So like, for instance, I rent, and if I was to buy and look at all the expenses of a mortgage with 5 to 10% down and all the costs that would be associated with living there, I could get a 2-bedroom, no yard apartment, or I could rent a 4-bedroom with yard in a nice neighborhood for the same price. So there's a huge difference in arbitrage between buying and renting in my current location. Massive dislocation. And part of that is like, even though property tax and all this is factored in, the person who owns the house that I rent in, they bought in 2018. So they're just looking for somebody to cover mortgage, rent. Hopefully the house will appreciate, a little slight premium to deal with maintenance, but their cost is way lower because they bought so long ago. So that everything is calculated on that. And, and then again, I completely agree with Jor here, where there's a massive monetized premium on top of real estate. People are thinking of it as an investment, just as my landlord is, where he'll pass this home on to his kids. And yeah, they didn't make that much extra from charging rent because I got, these really did give me a good deal here. But the home has appreciated so much, or at least that's what he's hoping. That's the bet he's making. And that's not a bet I would be willing to make. I think it's going to appreciate probably in line with inflation. And I think Bitcoin is going to rapidly out appreciate that. So that's the bet I'm making. And it's a dislocation, right? It's an asymmetry of knowledge when you look at these kind of things. I think anything with a monetary premium that doesn't deserve it, right? Houses should not be investments. They should not, like, there's certain properties that could be, even on a Bitcoin standard. But the vast majority of homes do not start to make sense in that way on a Bitcoin standard. So I think I think gold gets demonetized. I think stocks do. I think real estate does. A lot of that premium comes out and goes towards the best sound money over I'm talking decades here. And that is Bitcoin. So that's the bet I'm making as a renter. But it's in some cases, it does make sense to buy still, even with all that said, because there's a dislocation in the opposite direction, potentially.
I want to double click on something that Shore said. You said something around like you're wrong so far with real estate crashing down, something like that, that you like the real estate prices have gone up significantly in the past years. I'm in the process of writing a book, as some might know, and so I do a lot of research on that stuff, and so I looked it up, and I was like, okay, has real estate actually gone up? And of course, it's, I think, not fair to compare real estate now to Bitcoin. I get that. Like if I pull up the 10-year chart of Bitcoin against real estate, obviously it looks horrible. And I don't know if it's fair right now to do it because Bitcoin is such a young asset that grows very fast. But I think it's fair to compare real estate to gold. I think that's a fair comparison to compare those two together. They're both there since forever. And so if you look from I'm born 1998, so like this is about as old, the chart is about as old as I am. And since then, obviously real estate versus gold is the Schiller case home price index, which is, I think, one of the most popular ones, which I found. Real estate actually has gone down like significantly in the past 25 years against gold. And gold, yeah, of course, gold has been an amazing investment the last 1 year. but it also has gone down in the whole 2010, 2000, in 2000, in 2010, 2020. So it's like, obviously it's not as good as it maybe sounds, because if you compare it and if you measure it in US dollars, if you measure it in something that is not debased away, real estate all of a sudden goes down. It still might make sense because you can buy 100 units of real estate with just like a 3% down payment, and you get the 100 units. And so you get a massive leverage on that 3% gainer, as I said before. But real estate is not doing good. And then if you compare it to Bitcoin, obviously it's a lot worse.
A lot worse. That's a great comparison, though. I think should be a real eye opener to people, because that's the illusion happening right now. Is everybody thinks their house is going up in value, but it's not. It's going up in fiat money. And then the only reason why it's going up is because they're printing more units, and those units follow stores of value. And since 1971, real estate has been one of the better stores of value. But when you measure it in something real like gold, that cannot be inflated, that cannot be changed with government policy, it sure looks a lot different. So I had one more point that I wanted to add with that, but I'm curious to hear what Rajat has to say on this.
Well, I think in general, it doesn't really make sense to buy real estate as a savings vehicle. Just as an invest, I don't think you need to buy more houses than you need. Just buy the one house that you need. After you buy that one house, even then, buying that one house may not be worth it if you do the math. But I think there's more to it than just the math. It's about the stability. It's about being able to raise a family. I think having a house is probably one of the greatest ways to become free, because you're not constantly relying on a landlord. You can do everything yourself. I like that aspect of owning a house, but there's also the other side of things where if you plan to move soon, then it doesn't really make sense to buy a house. So let's say you buy a house and you plan to leave within 5 years. You're probably not going to make back the fees that you have in appreciation. Let's say your realtor fees, they're like 5-6%. You have to pay land transfer taxes. You have to pay for a moving cost. You have to pay for all that stuff. If you only plan to live there for, let's say, 3 years, it doesn't make sense. You're not going to make the money back because your property could easily just go down. Whereas, let's say you plan to hold a house for 30 years, or you plan to stay there forever, like you plan to plant roots there. In that case, it would make sense. So it really depends on your personal situation. And even in the beginning, most of the money that you pay towards your house is going towards interest. So if you're selling your house, I think the number is, if you sell before 8 years, then you're probably at a loss. And most people sell on average in the US within 8 years. So it doesn't really make sense. And then on top of that, I don't know if you guys know, I've mentioned this before, but there's a statistic that shows that 10% of houses in the US are unoccupied. So there's no shortage of housing. People act like there's a shortage. There is no shortage. There are abundant houses. It's just that people are holding on to as many houses as they can, and they want to get loans on them. And it doesn't really make sense for them to, the rules and regulations that we have make it so it doesn't make sense for them to repair the house, because they can't make back their rent. Like in New York, there's rent control, and a lot of places just sit empty because for the landlord to repair it and to make it livable, it costs so much money, and they wouldn't be able to make back the money that they paid to repair it. So all those things, I think all those are factors. To me personally, I would never want to buy houses as a savings account. The work alone is just not worth it. Why would I want to deal with a tenant? I don't want a part-time job.
There's so much risk too. Like even what you stated there, where a house becomes essentially unlivable in the state of New York.
Yeah.
You could technically live there. There might be a couple dangerous things or whatever, but it also becomes unsellable because to fix it up costs way too much money that it ends up not being worth it. So now you have an asset that you're stuck with, right? This is a completely illiquid asset at that point. And I find real estate so risky, so much more risky than people think it is. Like there was a huge boom of real estate and people moving to Austin a few years ago. And Texas doesn't have the regulation like Canada has, where they restrict a lot of building, right? There's a lot of land in Texas, so they just allow you to build. And the real estate went up, but then it came right back down. And it's not because of lack of demand. There's still people moving to Austin more and more, right? It's still growing. but it's because they're allowing people to build. So real estate value did not continue to go up based on demand because the regulation was different in that specific jurisdiction. And those things can flip and flop based on who gets elected. So like, I just like, it doesn't matter. Like there's certain things that will pump up the price of Bitcoin, like jurisdictional and regulation things as well. But like none of that fundamentally changes the asset. Like Bitcoin is global, liquid, and completely decentralized in the way that it's developed and it currently exists, the network itself. So it just feels a lot safer. I would worry about owning real estate for so many reasons. And I have owned real estate in the past and thought about renting it out. And then I was like, well, I'm not going to live next to the home. There's big trees. What if a tree falls on the house? What if my renter doesn't pay me? It feels so scary to have all those vulnerabilities. And then I just sold it for twice as much as I bought it for because I lucked out with timing, and then bought a bunch of Bitcoin with it. And I just sleep like a baby that sleeps well. And I'm fine with Bitcoin.
You're also giving somebody a significant portion of your wealth, and they get to do whatever they want with it. Right? Like when you think of it that way, you buy a house, it's a significant portion of your wealth. You're giving it to someone, and your insurance can just be like, wait, we're not covering you if they do something stupid. Right? Like what if they just burn the house down and it's intentional, and the insurance is like, we're not paying you for this. What are you going to do? What if the guy has no wealth for you to take from? You're never going to become whole again. Right? And then on top of that, I was talking to someone, and he said that in LA where the fires happened?
Palisades in LA, yeah.
Yeah, and they said that some insurance companies are no longer covering for that kind of damage anymore. They're not even insuring houses anymore. So what happens if you own a property and you need to get rid of it, and suddenly your insurance company says we're not covering it anymore and you can't sell it? Who's going to buy a house that you can't get insurance on?
There are so many problems with real estate.
Completely outside of your control.
Yeah, completely out of your
Robin.
control. You have no control over that.
I think the other part of it too, like Rajat, you were talking about what was it now? And I have so many thoughts on this. I'm having a hard time keeping track of it. But damn it, what were we talking about there? Property tax? No. Maintenance? No. Shit. I got distracted, boy. Sorry.
I have one more point. Maybe you think about it before, because or after that, because I think we focus in Bitcoin a lot on like gold, and now we also focus on the bond market, and we focus on all those things. But real estate is actually the biggest market of them all. If we look at the Jesse Meyer chart, which is, I think, a chart that probably every Bitcoiner has seen in his life at some point. It's probably the most shown chart in all of Bitcoin. But here, the biggest chunk is real estate. And so if you know what we know of Bitcoin and you believe in that, and you're thinking about buying a home, you have to see those two buckets. We have on the one bucket Bitcoin at, I think it's a little bit under 2 trillion currently. It's probably like 1.5 or so. I'm not sure about the market cap currently, but it's 2 trillion or less. And then we have real estate at like 150x that, or probably like 200x of that value. How much of that is utility value? How much of that is because people own a home? And how much of that whole value is just monetary premium because people buy a home, not even rent it out, just to park some cash there? How many in Vienna, in Austria, where I'm living, there are so many ridiculous tax benefit for business owners to buy homes that my tax guy already told me 2 times, oh yeah, like if you this and this, then you can just buy homes and you can do this. And I know a guy, and I'm like, I don't want to buy homes. like what are you talking about? But like, it's the tax strategy number one, is at least in Austria. I don't know how it is around the world. And so it's like, we put everyone into this like real estate, like buy a home, and if you have a lot of money, buy apartment complexes and commercial real estate and all of that. It just props up the whole market, and I think real estate is poised to completely fall apart, especially in Bitcoin terms. I think in US dollar terms it will always go up because US dollars will fall apart faster than real estate. With that small caveat, as also Rashad said, it can still make on an individual basis sense that you buy a home. And hey, if you have a lifestyle choice to make, I think it's very valid. Like if you know that place and it's the dream home and you want to be there for 30 years, like go ahead and do it. But think about how young Bitcoin is and how old and huge real estate is, and see which horse you want to kind of bet on.
You know,
that's the point that I was going to make there, Robin. Actually, you reminded me of it there, because that's what I was talking about before. I think that you mentioned that real estate has definitely gone down in gold terms and in real terms, but I also think that real estate is going to go down in fiat terms at some point here. And I know that's the hard part, I think, for people to imagine right now. But I think the only reason it hasn't started to go down, or I might be wrong about this, if you go year to year, it actually might be down from a couple of years ago today. But I just feel like the average person has this mental block in their mind that their house is always going to go up forever because it's a house. But that's just not reality. Like there's so many different factors involved with that. And especially because there has been such a premium on it, as Forrest talked about before, that's what's kind of raised the value of it. It's not because they've made improvements to it. It's not because their neighborhood's better. It's not because they put up a school right beside it. It's because they printed more money. And it's because people have been storing their value in real estate when that's not what real estate is designed to do. Real estate's designed to be lived in. And so I think that, I think what's going to play out here over these next couple of years, housing prices have probably stabilized. I don't know. Can someone double check that for me? Is like what the house prices have done for the last couple of years. But like eventually people are going to get to the point where I guess the question is, why are they selling the house? If it's their second or third property, maybe there's less of a rush. But if they can't afford to make their mortgage payments anymore because the interest rate changed or they lost their job or whatever the situation is, as time goes on, people are going to get more and more desperate, and they're just going to have to change their mind in the fact that, hey, maybe I'm not going to make money on this house like I thought that I was going to. And that's when we're going to see a bit of a pullback, even in fiat terms. That's kind of my outlook for the next couple of years. I don't know if you guys agree with that or not, but it just makes sense in my head that would happen.